May I welcome Pastor Anthony Bugembe to speak to us today. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, this is me, and I also work for another organization called Kinetic Future Solutions, which are just into communications and technology, but also financial services. Yeah, we stay in Kulambiro. Kulambiro is a village in Nakawa West constituency. Yeah, and we enjoy our lives here. It's a little small clan where I'm the head. My wife is the co-head. Okay, I'll take this off and then I'll put on my slides because I know time is very limited. And like I said, the slides were still being worked on this very morning. But it's interesting how God works. So you bear with me. For those that are probably before sharing, I will share them, but I'll first finish them most definitely. So as they are, I will share, knowing that we will definitely have them done completely. Now, was invited by Pastor Jairus to give an overview of this chapter from a book that, interestingly, has been around for over 15 years, I think. Yeah, over 15 years. But the information in there is as if it was written yesterday. Very relevant, very up to date. And the purpose of this is, one, as a family mountain, we need to see that we restore or are restored to what God intended us to be as families. Am I a co-host? I can share my screen.
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. And this is it. Okay, so the chapter I'm summarizing is chapter 2 of that book called Train Your Child God's Way by David C. Park. It's called A Strange Generation. And like the picture you see there, they are having fun. These are brothers and sons and daughters, but they are quite a character trait. The reason as to why they are called millennials, like we are going to see. And please note that the context of the book is how I'm going to summarize it, because I know there are also very good millennials. Some of them are our children. In fact, most of them. But now the context or the perspective of this book, the writer wants to draw our attention to us to restore the gap that's between the generations that happened maybe before the 80s, the generation, but between the 80s and now. So that's the context by which the author makes his points. I don't think he hates millennials, or myself, I don't hate them, because millennials is just a phrasing. But he wants us to be concerned of what is happening. So these are the points to address if the time allows. There's a big gap between the current generation and the ones 50 years ago. Now, 50 years ago seemed to be so many years ago, but 50 years ago is just about what? 1974. Okay, you can say 1970s. From 1980s backwards, and the generations we have today, there's a glaring gap between them. And then I'll summarize the chapter. I'll pick a favorite attribute from that chapter, and then the takeaway and conclusion. A generation gap, it's simply defined as the different thoughts and worldviews held by different generation cohorts. That's the simplest way. You know, the thoughts are different, the worldviews held by different generational cohorts. The generation gap between individuals can be used to explain differences in worldviews and actions observed among those of age. I mean, you've heard phrases like, Daddy, this is our time. Daddy, this is not Stone Age. Daddy, you came before computers, BC. It's a different thing. So the thought patterns, the actions, the worldviews are totally different, even when we are in the same world and coexisting. So that's a generational gap in this context. That's the pictorial presentation. Down here is probably somebody who's a grandpa who's in his 80s. And then the other side is probably a great-grandson. She probably is in his 20s already, but there's a gap between them. The connect has a very big divide. One may fall in, whoever wants to reach the other may fall into the ditch. The thoughts are different, the actions are different, and even tastes, the fashion, food, everything is different, exhibited by members of younger generations versus the older ones. It's not good to have a generational gap. The generations are supposed to transition through each, and they should gel. It's a concern if there's a generation gap. Just like you see that picture, it means there's danger. Someone can fall in a ditch, and especially the young ones who would want to follow up to live to this kind of age. So the summary has these sub-themes. It explains the millennials, who they are, and then there is an attribute of that they are hovered over childhoods. I'll explain that in a bit. The expectations, forgive my spelling there, building a bad reputation, then old paths, and religion has failed, and they take away there that there is hope, as it were. So millennials, in the context and perspective of the book, millennials are a generation mainly born in the 90s and 2000s. That book was written, the first edition was written in 2009. So you can imagine, by that time, the people in the 80s were the teenagers or the millennial, the categorization. But in the perspective of 2024, the 21st century, children born in the 90s, of course now they are in their 30s plus, and 2000s are the millennials in our context. And the book here gives a perspective that they are very full of themselves, they have eroded basic morals, and they have a waning respect to the elder generation. The older the generation, the detachment, the more the detachment. They see the older generation as one that is really expired or is expiring. So their way, they very bad way say it's either their way or the highway. They don't have any much regard to what the older generation has to say. So that's a simple definition. And these are some of their characteristics. Instant gratification. They want instant gratification, here and now. You know, I want to do a job, I want to get the money, I want to build the house, instant. They don't have regard for waiting on things. And I think that's why you have a lot of instant fast foods on the go, because they no longer can even wait for a good steamed meal. I'm trying to make a point. but also surrounded by a digital world. Everything around them is digital. That's why they will call you analog. They will call you before computers, BC. They also most likely grew up in two-parent household where both parents work. I don't think that's bad, but still, in the perspective of the author, it's like daddy is on a workshop, is moved probably out of the country. Mommy is also equally busy. So children go to school, mommy goes to work, daddy goes to work. And then they meet on dinner table and the business is the same every day. So it's very difficult to even monitor how the children are living because each seems to be living their own direction. I've been able to witness such a family. Daddy, professor, mommy works in an NGO, very busy, involved, a lot of travel. The children are home. Of course, have a turnover of households that come in and go. And meanwhile, the children are growing. And before you know it, they are 24, 26. And that's how their life has been. So that's the characteristic. And then the parents encourage the children to give their opinions. Everything, darling, Tabitha, do you think it's good for us to go to, which restaurant should we go to? Okay, I was one time in downtown and I would see parents who come with their children to buy them bags, school bags. And there's nothing wrong with it. But you see, the funny bit would be, I was found in a bag shop one time. Several times, especially it's about this time when they're going back to school. So they bring these children to pick a bag. Meanwhile, parent X has a certain budget they are working with and a certain style of bag probably they would prefer for their child. But again, they bring them and ask them, please choose what you want. Now, the young children are very interesting. They have their choice, they have their pick because their worldviews are different. She would not mind having a bag that has all sorts of animations or messages because that's what appeals to them. Now you would see parent fighting with child right at the shop. No, this will not do. No. Mommy, for me, I want this one. And then you start seeing tantrums, right before strangers. And in my head, I'm like, okay, you brought the lad to make a choice. You gave them that option. Let them have their choice. Otherwise, the best thing would be, I am buying this for you, and may the Lord bless you. This is the bag for this term or for this year. But the fact that you're asking them to give an opinion, to make a choice, you have to live with it. It would be dramatic even sometimes. But that's the generation we are raising. Everything you ask their opinion. Which school would you want to go to? Which cafe would you want to sit at? In the name of, I want to make my child live better than I lived because my times were so bad. They deserve better. All of those reasons that we gave. Every time they have to input on matters of discussion. They have to give an opinion about things. Now that's a generation. And I believe some of them are in our households. And yes, that's the reason as to why this is very important, this message today. They are hovered over in their childhood. Mommy drops them everywhere, if it's about a job, they make sure they go with them to a job interview. They want to influence the interviewer. My child is good at this. Please, there's a fellowship we go to of children who are more like under rehab, not even children. They are old people, but they're children to their parents. But there's this particular one that the parent told the caretaker, please do not annoy her. If she wants something, please attend to her. Give her her space. Meanwhile, she's fed at home, she's come in rehab, and still mommy is giving instruction of what should happen in the rehab. You know, you've seen them. Everywhere, mommy and daddy are the ones trying to hover them. Hovering here is like they're in a helicopter. It's mommy and daddy driving them. You know, oh, that's not good for my child. Don't treat them like that. You know, my child, by 4 o'clock, she's tired. So can you give her a job that kind of thing. And then they also maintain a pragmatic view concerning the modern workplace. It's not fun. It's not fun. Should put some things around, put a screen, for relaxation at a certain time breaks. Do you have a snack between the work schedules and timelines? All of these things. The parents are helicopter parents involved in their children's every move to intercede in their affairs. A child who is even 30 years is at the workplace, they are being held for a discipline, and then before you know it, daddy and mommy are coming and knocking on the door. Why are you treating our child like this? Is it that kind of parenthood? So the children are hovered. Their lives are micromanaged from one activity to another. Mommy, I want to do this. Is it okay? Meanwhile, mommy calling mommy is probably 40 years. It's even worse if he's a guy. But every activity, everything, it's mommy's opinion, daddy's opinion, even when they are 10, 15 years away from home, into their own lives. Now, that is millennial from the perspective of this book. Their expectations, they prefer the attitude of you are special, you can't be wrong to every situation they ask. But why? Tell you know what, it's a good thing to be at your workplace by 7 a.m. because you need to take some time to recollect yesterday's activity. But mommy, why? Why when I can do that in the time? So their attitude is that they cannot keep a job from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. without fun in between. They cannot be wrong because they now know they are very much used to the digital space around them. They are reared to be tolerant with don't judge. So in fact, the phrasing don't judge, they use it in a sense to cushion their own wrongs. So they'll tell you, why I judge, don't judge others. In the actual instance, they're saying, don't look at my faults. So it's more like a cushion to use that term, don't judge. And I think we even have a lot of these in our churches. Why are you judging me? Why are you judging them? Don't touch the Lord's anointed. It's a cushion to say, I am good how I am. So they lack patience, they lack discretion, and they lack wisdom and prudence. I learned not so long ago that wisdom is the knowledge to do something. The knowledge to, but prudence is the knowledge. No, I think I've not phrased the way I supposed to. Okay, wisdom is knowing what to do, and prudence is knowing what not to do. I think I like that simple distinction between those two words. Wisdom, knowing what to do. Prudence, knowing what not to do. And I tell you, we need prudence because there are a lot of options, but what are you supposed to do? What's best for you in that situation? That takes prudence. So these are our friends, our sisters, and our children. They lack patience because they want instant gratification. They don't have discretion. They bring it as a point of prayer. They bring it as gossip in all of these things because they don't even know how to discern. And then prudence, they don't even know what not to do. Those are the generation that we have. Okay, I think I ended here. It would go on and on, but I'll talk through the others. So my slides ended here, but I'll talk through the others quickly. The other one is they have a bad reputation. A bad reputation. a generation that doesn't take no for an answer. No, they don't. They switch jobs. They are in this job before you know it because the manager is not appreciating my talent, my time. They switch. They go to another one who pays better. I think I've even seen them in the sports field. See, this young boy is very talented, but he's so full of himself. He makes outrageous demands. He has a contract, meanwhile, of about 5 years, but he's making outrageous contract because another club wants to have them. They no longer train with the rest. They do all sorts of things so that they release them to go to the other club. That is this generation. I guess you are able to see most of these things in our time and day. It's either their way or the highway, meaning that they are not taking any other option apart from what they choose, their way or the highway. They are over-parented. We talked about that already. Someone is 35 years, but everything, but mommy, but daddy can. I mean, you find even those who are married, a man who even has children, but every time he tells his spouse, I have to first ask what mommy thinks. No, we can't go on vacation. Let me first hear mommy's opinion. Or we can't go for a retreat. Now that's husband, daddy on his own. He's still referring to mommy of all even those trivial choices, petty things to decide with their spouse. That's over-parenthood. Over-parenthood. I was amazed by that term, that you can actually over-parent. Over-indulged. Everything is about fun. Everything is about pleasure. Even a job, they first find out what is my, of course, terms of reference. When do I take my leave? Is it a paid leave? Is there what are there team? They call it team building activities that we can enjoy at every time. It's overindulgence because, like I said, just full of themselves. Everything is around and rotating about them. They are overprotected, especially by their parents. You remember the helicopter parents? Leave my child. I mean, you have seen children that have told you that they've moved from schools to schools. One is just doing O-level, S1 to S4, but they have gone through 10 schools just for those 4 years. And the parent is justifying many things that the child is undergoing. Overprotection. In fact, there are now companies who they will tell you in their qualification job opportunities, they tell you we want someone between probably 35 and above, and then with 20 years of experience. Of course, in a sense, they are technically controlling the millennials not to join. Not because they don't want fresh brains, but because they know they have a certain character trait. So in the papers, you just see 20 years of experience, or 15 or 10. Someone above 30, but 10 years of experience. That is because their way of life is different. Their view of life is different. Now, as I come to a conclusion, the old paths, Jeremiah 6:16 says the old paths have rest for our souls. In fact, it says, walk down the roads, look for the old paths, and then you'll find rest for our soul. What is he trying to say? That we are trying all sorts of new things, but they're not working. How about we have a self-reflection, especially as parents first, and we become deliberate? I remember in my concluding remarks of this summary, I said, it's not just about prayer, because we have prayed a lot. Let us pray for our children. Let us pray. Meanwhile, the children you're praying for, they are somewhere having a house party. Every time. We are going to be deliberate. Even if it means my children, I'm going to be the pastor of my children. So I'm going to suspend going to church for this next 2 months for the sake of a certain alignment I need. So be it. In fact, that's real action after prayer. The odd part is God has a certain way, and he has laid it very, very clearly in scriptures of what we ought to understand regarding the things. Can we borrow and go back to what were those old ways, the old paths? Remember in the prayer school, I would say, the highway, the big road is where there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of happening. This car is going this direction, Iganga, another one coming to Kampala. Some parts, the dust is rising, and even your view is obstructed. But a path is usually a footpath. Not so much traffic. In fact, oftentimes you are alone, but it gives you some self-reflection. You're able to see the butterflies hovering on the flowers. You're able to hear birds chirping in the woods because it's a path. There's a bit of less distraction, but a lot of attention to things to reflect on. And I believe that's why it says, go back look for the old path where you find rest for your soul. So the old path in this context is God's way. As ancient as it may sound, but it's the way of God. And if you look at the model of the family in how God commended it to the children of Israel. For example, he told them every Friday, if I'm to use the context of our time and days naming, Friday evening, Saturday evening, it was a time for families. Sit down in the evening, give a reflection of how the week has been. Children, commend your parents for all the food they have bought, for all the care they have done, and bless them. The parents do the same. Compliment your children. Speak life in them as you open the book. Then have dinner together. Lay hands on each other. Father lays hands on all the children and the mother. The mother prays for the father. God lays hands on him. Every week. Now, that as religious as it may look, it is going to inform a lot of other things that will happen the next 5-6 days. Just imagine you doing that every week. Because there's repentance, there's reconciliation, there is tolerance for one another, there is praying for one another. It sounds old, but that's the rest for the soul. Old path. But did you also realize that even religion has failed? All religion has failed. I'm talking about this slide where I had summarized them. Religion has failed. God's spiritual laws and commandments have been put aside. They are obsolete. Jesus said it is finished. He said those laws are no longer relevant. That is not true. Morality is a matter of personal taste. What is moral to you may not be moral to me. Do you see that in our churches today, especially the Pentecostal rites? You find a bunch of young people, meanwhile, they're in this church. And they say, don't judge me, I'm not instant coffee. I had that phrase, what do you mean instant coffee? You know what, instant coffee, you just put it and you drink. So you think you can tell me to change overnight? Give me time. This is my time. Doesn't matter what happens to my body. Rather, it does not matter because my spirit is sealed. You've heard those things. Hyper-grace hawking everywhere. Self-entitlement. I go to Christian, born-again churches, and you see a whole self-aggrandizement. Someone is just about themselves. Meanwhile, they are mentioning Jesus as Lord, but everything rotates around them. If they don't like a pastor, they will change to another church. If someone just rebukes them, they change that camp because it's just about them. Anything that comes or rebukes or tries to correct them, they go. Religion has failed. In fact, even in our religion and faith, we now tolerate more of political correctness. Oh, don't call them LGBTQ. Call them another orientation. Inclusivity. This is in church. all in the name of let us coexist. And you see that coexisting is not basically for tolerance for the right way, but just to not to hurt the other party because there's something we are going to get from them. It's really self-motivated, even on the religious perspective. Standards of righteousness have been substituted with political correctness. As long as you're politically correct, don't worry. Teens no longer can tell right from wrong because the parents themselves no longer seem to know the difference. Is that wrong? I mean, we talk about a lot of things, even in the gospel that we're running. And you hear parents asking, and of course they are innocent. Maybe because most of us are millennial parents ourselves. So if a parent does not know, the child definitely cannot know. So that is the summary. Thank you for having me. And then the takeaway there is that there is hope. There is hope. God, I mean, the fact that the AKBF Family Mountain is concerned about this, the works that you've been doing over the years, it shows that we are concerned of restoring. And the restoration starts with one person. As a ministry in South Uganda, we began the Family Restoration Initiative, where we are deliberately taking these teachings. In fact, we have dedicated these months to teach this foundation, even today at the lunchtime. I think there's going to be another presentation in the same, but also our leaders will be, and other people will be hosting in our own families, and then explain, give their own examples and illustration of what happens in their families. And that will happen Friday, some select Fridays. In fact, the next one will be Friday 7th. Okay, it's a hybrid where we talk about what we do in our homes and demonstrate that online, a hybrid, some people would be physical. So that's the hope that I see. And we should never say, where do we go? Huh? I hear the phrase to go ingewa. The going is going back home and finding the old path. There is hope if you and me choose to do the right thing. Thank you very much. I hand back to you, moderator David.
Thank you, our speaker of the day this morning. Amen. We thank you so much, and we thank the Lord for using you to tell us on what is prevailing with us, the millennial parents. My take, I didn't know things like prudence, knowing what to do. So whatever I do, my children are able to copy. My other take is we see these children or these millennials switching jobs for greener pastures. They don't care at all. Where they leave you in shit or better, they don't care. They are actually selfish, very selfish. We have also overparented, which we need to work on. And then I also see that the Bible tells it that as far as Friday evenings to Saturday, it was meant for family. I also heard from the speaker saying that we need to compliment our children for the time. And then he also emphasized that can we please embark on the Lord's law? Some of us have ignored that. However, we shall be able to entertain some of the questions in our chat room. Please, if you have any question, you can also bring it in. However, Pastor Bugembe, I have a few questions that I think you need to answer. My question is, do we still ask them for their personal opinions in our homes, these millennials? The second one is, can we still help them there are some parents who have really gone ahead to look for their children jobs and even intervene, like you said, in case they've not gotten a good situation at workplaces, the parents will still intervene and quarrel. How would we go about that, such kind of parents? Then the third one and the last one.
Okay.
I have a scenario where we grew up from. Once you're 18, then you can be able to leave home. What do we do in this era where a child still stays home? He's no longer a child, but a man of 30 years. For us at 18 years, you are at liberty, you have to leave home so that you go and become a man. Thank you.
Then you may need to repeat the last one, the third one.
The last one is the Ugandan law says 18 years, you're a man. And where I grew up from is like at 18, you're at liberty to go and fend for yourself. But for today, it is 30 years, even 40 years, somebody is still at their home, traditional home. Do we still embark on the old way of saying that you're 18, now you can go and fend for yourself? How would we go about such kind of situations at 18 years? Do we chase them away from our homes? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. The first one is the parents. Okay, I was not noting down because I was moving, but I had you talk about them. We're looking for.
We have to consult the children, Pastor. We have to consult the children for their personal opinions in whatever we are doing or not. Are you still on? We seem to have lost you. We seem to have lost him.
Maybe it's in a sound shadow area. You should come on in a minute.
Sorry, I jumped off. I don't know even where you stopped hearing from me.
Yes, I was trying to ask you whether we still have to ask for their personal opinions in homes, especially when we are asking them in their personal decisions to help us in decisions, the millennials. That was my number one.
Yes, that one I said yes, it's fine. But again, it's context. Very much context needs to be considered because yeah, they're young men and young women. Their opinion can be fresh for the season or regarding things. But I think the context of the writer is that the parents have surrendered their authority to these people because they don't want to annoy them, because especially if you find single parenthood, the father is in another home, the mother. So there's an attention to make this child, be on my side. So they want to help. Everything, it's okay, darling, it's okay, sweetheart, because I want to win your favor. I want to win you to be on my side. I'm just giving an example, a wide example. So their opinion matters because they're living people in your home. But the moment you surrender your judgment and authority to them, that's where the problem comes. David, give me the next one, the second one.
The next one is, do we help them to get interviews and intervene during their lifetime at that workplace as parents?
I think, yeah, it's still the same way that helping them, it's still fine. I mean, there's a child that can be needing genuine help from all sorts of things. And as a parent, I would come in that. But I think still the context of the writer is if a parent is the one hovering over the child, we call them the helicopter parents. My child, you don't do this. My child can only work until this time. My child, this and that. I mean, he's like,
sorry. My child is even, I mean, even here you see some of these scandals during weddings and all of that. You know, you cannot marry from that family because of this and this. You cannot, and you see the point is not even moral reasons or anything, but the point is because the parent has their particular choice. You know, because of connections and so on and so forth. So much as we can intervene and help, but again, the parent's motive should be right. And the right here is a godly right. What would God do? What would the Lord do in such situations? And then you talked about leaving home. Is it 18 or 30? Please rephrase it again.
At 18, the Ugandan law says you are independent. So do you leave home at 18? And can we say, please, at 18, please go and fend for yourself? Do we leave this kid or this millennial up 30 years to leave home, to stay home until? That was the question.
Interesting question. I think the idea would be for every parent to take care of their children and to prepare them for the world. The earliest they can leave, better. I mean, 18, they are not yet finished school, much as they are adults by law. Usually it's 23, 24, depending on the course they're doing at university. But here is a parent to prepare them. You don't prepare them at 18, but way earlier. So by the time they're 18 and 19, 20, they have a different level. In fact, it's even them who will say, Daddy, I would like to start up something by myself, especially the men. The girls should be a different way because, yeah, it's a little, they are a little more fragile, if I'm to use that word. You know, it's not easy to tell them, go and be independent by yourself. But a man, 24, 25, they can even be the ones who say, Daddy, I want to go and start these challenges myself, to look for rent, to do all of these things. I would not hesitate when Jethro, my son, is 23, 24, and is telling me that. But again, it's not that we need to push them, because again, you don't want to push them to a world that you have not prepared them to go into. So still, it comes back to a parent. What is your role when they are 1 to 18 years, 1 to 20 years? Because that will actually inform their decisions from that point for them. They will show a level of independence. They will show all of these things because you have trained them. If we can learn from the ego, it trains them from when they are young eaglets, so that they are going into. So 30 years is really too old for someone to still stay in the home, in my view, especially a man. But again, it depends on what I've just explained. What has a parent done between that time? Because sometimes we overprotect them. They can't do anything. You find a child, I see them in international schools, they cannot even sit in a taxi to go to Kampala because they are afraid of the surroundings. So how are they going to really face the world? David, I hope those responses are helpful. Some other people can also chip in. I thank you.
Helpful, very helpful. Thank you so much, Pastor Anthony. They are very helpful. We treasure this kind of talk, and some of us are young parents. We are trying to learn from that. Thank you so much, Pastor. I will thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.